All right, guys, welcome back. This is episode 6. Is eczema just skin deep? This is the topic we're going in today, and I am so excited to dive into this and to do it well. So, we obviously have Diana here today. If you want to say hi.
Hey, everybody.
But to do this topic justice, we wanted to bring on a guest speaker. Her name is Rebecca Layton, and she is a physician's assistant in dermatology. So I'm going to give you a second to say hi, Rebecca.
Hi, everybody.
And then let me just give Rebecca her back. Let me give her background. This woman is amazing in what she's been studying over the years, and I want you to understand what she's bringing to the topic today. So, she grew up in Tullahoma, which is how Diana knows her, and she is very passionate about this topic. We've had many conversations with her, and we've grown to love her mind and her mission. So, she completed her secondary education in Tullahoma, but then received her bachelor's of science in chemistry from the University of Memphis. And that led her into neurological research at Vanderbilt University, which is amazing. And she fell in love with research. In fact, when we were talking to her, she said at once she was just a lab rat. Like she loved the research. And I say that because I can relate to that, Rebecca. I love research. So her heart is definitely in it. And then she also got her master's degree in medicine, August of 2009, from Trevecca Nazarene University's physician assistant program. And then you even told us that you went in to practice emergency medicine, which is awesome. And what a deeper background that probably gave you. And so welcome, Rebecca, because that's a pretty amazing background and kind of speaks to a little bit of everything that you've been able to dabble into in your profession.
Yep. And I've been doing dermatology now for 13 years. So, yeah, and love it.
Awesome. Okay, so we have so much to talk about, so we are gonna dive in. And just as the title says, is eczema just skin deep? I really want to begin with literally that question. So tell us, Rebecca, in your clinical experience, is eczema just a skin issue? And I know that's a big question, but
It's a,
go ahead.
yeah, it's a loaded question. So, obviously, skin is the largest organ of the body, and a lot of people don't think of it that way. There's a lot of surface area. I understand there's a lot more in the gut, but the organ itself is huge. Skin and especially eczema can actually be just skin deep. There are definitely different types of eczema that I see in my practice. A lot of what people see as very what I would call just mild eczema. I actually term now just a contact dermatitis. So I see a lot of those kids with what we call flexural eczema, where we see it on the insides of the arms, backs of the knees, maybe a little bit on the face. I look to that as more of just a really, really mild eczema. But when it comes to what I coin as pan eczema, where we see the skin barrier all over the body is red, is inflamed, is irritated, is itchy, that's what signals me to say this is definitely something more.
That's really interesting. So, can I ask you, does that surface level eczema, is it a given that it will always lead into that pan type that you're explaining, or no?
No, well, I think it just depends. It kind of is a case by case. There are lots of studies on it's called atopic dermatitis in our world, on different types of atopic dermatitis and how some kids do get better, based on how I help them to get a less chemical environment because that's what I do too. Versus, if they have it all over, we can help the skin barrier, but we know that there's like something else going on, and those kids can go on to develop other things. So,
Mhm. Okay, so that is such a great segue into where my mind goes is, so you're basically saying that even that maybe localized skin, deep eczema, it's telling us something. Like it,
absolutely.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing is there's a communication level there that you're picking up on in the clinic, even if it's not this pan, setting of eczema. More, if I'm understanding you, what you'd call what is it? Did you just say topical dermatitis, or remind me that
Atopic
atopical?
dermatitis is what eczema is called
Okay,
in the
so
dermatology world.
Okay, so and thank you for clarifying that. So in that setting, you're basically saying, but as a clinician in the clinic, I know that this is telling us something. And you had mentioned like
Hmm.
I'll sometimes help remove the chemical environment,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
so tell me, how do you start helping the parents a lot of the times connect the dots when you see this happen in your clinic?
So obviously, when I see an eczema patient, like with a lot of what are inflammatory skin diseases, I do a very, very extensive history. Okay, so tell me about what you're putting on your skin, what detergents are coming in contact with it, what body washes are you using, what creams are you using, what kind of sunscreens are you using. I mean, it's just not, hey, here's a cream and here's the door. I'm obviously talking to mom and dad, like, are you using a gentle detergent? And there's misnomers about what's a gentle detergent, so there's a lot of knowledge that I can give patients on, even what is said in popular literature, like, oh, this is the best eczema cream or whatever, and I'm like, well, no, research studies actually say it's not. So I do a really full history, like, has this been all over before? Is this progressing? Is this getting better? Just a full history as any of us would do when we see a patient for the first time.
And tell me, how's that received in your office from the parents themselves?
Most parents, when they've made it to my office, because I'm in dermatology, they've at least seen their pediatrician. They've done the first step, and they're like, okay. I mean, a lot of them will come in and start taking notes. Okay, just tell me what I need to do because it's miserable. It's miserable for the child. It's miserable for the parents. Um, so I mean, there's just so many things that eczema can affect. It can affect their sleep. If I mean, we all know if we have kids, like if you affect their sleep, because they're itching or uncomfortable, you're affecting, their diet, their ability to like take in nutrients because they're fussy. I mean, there's so many things as a parent when you have a child with this horrible skin disease that it's affecting so much of that child's life.
That touches me as a mom because not that my kids have struggled with eczema, but as a mom, just wanting your child to have this deeper like emotional growth and development, like
Mhm.
we all desperately want it for them. And man, I couldn't imagine then having a child in so much misery where you're desperate as a mom to connect with them and you just can't because they can't control their nervous system because of what's going on, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a deep ache I feel as a mom. And so what's interesting, and I'm just going to share this very briefly, is when I was a teenager. Now this is a different topic altogether. I mean, it's a topic in skin, but I had talked in a previous podcast how I had cystic acne. And why I'm going here is I remember going to the dermatologist and she would do injections in the skin where the cystic acne was. And she may have mentioned to me, now this was years ago when I was in high school, so she may have mentioned to me like, hey, your diet plays a role in this. Your like exactly what you're saying, like your environment, kind of plays a role in this. I don't remember it being a heavy part of the conversation, but I also would have to say at that point, I don't know if I truly understand. Like I was a teenager, so, my mom was probably there, but at that point, you kind of put a little bit more responsibility on the child, right? And so even if that doctor would have said to me, we really got to hone in on your environment and your nutrition, I don't know if I would have digested all of that and really understood that. And so that brings me to the topic of, as a doctor myself, I recognize this tension that is in the clinic when you're saying all the things that I'm like, yes, Rebecca, yes, like you're talking about the chemicals, the nutrients, the gut, the environment. But then as the patient, if I put myself back in those shoes, there's this tension where I'm like, just give me the fix. Like just make this go away. Um, So tell me, like, I'm sure you felt that tension. Talk to me about it, and maybe some things that you do in that moment.
So, like I said, a lot of my patients with severe eczema, they are ready to try, just anything I lay out on the table. I feel like there's I feel like there's a much better understanding nowadays with, the information superhighway we have in our hands every day. That, if you start looking up eczema creams, eventually you're going to get something about, like, even if it's, a holistic approach to it. So I feel like people are a little bit more open to the fact that this could be something else. And to be honest, I've had a lot of patients in the last few years. They're like, what is causing this? Not just make this go away, but like, why, even though we've tried this, why is it still not going away? Like, we're a little bit better, but what's causing this? What's the root cause? And thankfully, I am getting a lot more patients in my clinic, not with just with eczema, but with other skin diseases. They're like, why did this happen and how can we fix it? No, not everybody's that way, but there are a lot more people. And I feel like when it comes to kids, people have a lot more fire underneath them. Like, I want, any mom wants to fix it. If your kids are in a fight at school, like, you want to fix it, like there's that drive of a mother, of a parent, of saying, I want this fixed.
Mhm. That's awesome. I can relate to that. And so that's so good to hear. I do think the information out there maybe it brings them into your office with more curiosity. But like you
Mhm.
said, and this seems to be a pattern Diana and I see with our Optimize Your Gut program, is you're not the first person they run to. So this is kind of the person that's like, I've tried things, I'm getting more desperate. And sometimes it takes that, doesn't it? Like that level of being so desperate where it's like, okay, now I'm willing to maybe hear some more beyond the creams, right? But then
Absolutely.
let me segue that into, we've talked before, you and I, briefly about that symptom relief that you can, like, so it sounded to me when we talked before the podcast was like you meet them in that moment, right, where they're desperate, they're willing, but
Yes.
you're like, hey, let's do something right now, right? But then let's go deeper too. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. The first step with any eczema patient is going to be cooling them off. I mean, we have got to repair the skin barrier, at least give it some relief, because we can't. Like I said, these kids aren't sleeping. I've seen some that are, failure to thrive, which is, they're low weight, like they've got dark circles underneath their eyes. I mean, we've got to break apart their skincare regimen. I've got to put them on all the things that I know are the best sensitive skincare things. We've got to start doing, emollients. The first thing I use is topical steroids, to just calm that inflammation down. We do wet wraps. I've got to see if there's, secondary infection, because obviously a skin that is not the barrier it's supposed to be is going to be more susceptible to infection. And what's very interesting about that is that we know that a third of kids with eczema will go on to what they call the atopic march. So first it's eczema, then it's allergies, and then it's asthma. And so, like, some of that is due to they have this skin barrier that's broken down, and that's where our body recognizes things that it should be fighting. Well, if it's coming in contact, say, with food, as all toddlers do, their overreactive skin is going to make them more susceptible to thinking that this food on the body is an allergen. And so, like, that's why the skin can be the gateway to, other sensitivities that develop. And so, my whole goal is just calming the skin down, helping the kid get some sleep, getting the mom a peace of mind, so they're not itching, scratching. I mean, I have kids coming in, 2-year-olds where mom's got them in a onesie because they're scratching themselves to death. Like, we've got to just, we've got to do some triage and really just help like the day-to-day life first.
So that's so interesting. I love that we're making this aware. I mean, I don't know that people knew that connection, right? And so then that brings me to the question of, okay, if there's a mom listening and she's been told, or she clearly sees my child has eczema, potentially been diagnosed with it, but then I hear a lot of people say, well, won't your child just grow out of, like, won't they grow out of this eczema? Won't this just be a season? This is typical for kids. And so I want you to kind of speak to that mom of like, when should she seek a little bit more? Is that a myth? Is it reality that they'll grow out of it? Like, help that mom that's like, do I seek more help? What do I do?
So the mild eczema cases do not seem to go on to that atopic march. There's been lots of research studies that, I mean, in huge ones, like thousands of children where they've watched over a lifetime. And the mild eczema kids do not seem to go on to that. And so that's why I always coin it as an irritant dermatitis, that it's really not this like deeper eczema. Like their skin is not liking the environmental things that they're exposed to. Like I said, like detergents, like fragrances, washes that they probably shouldn't be using. But as that eczema starts getting a little bit more, or maybe even just the eczema that we're doing classic stuff on just doesn't seem to be getting better, like you put on a steroid cream and you've done all the sensitive skin stuff, but it's just not getting better. It may continue to develop into something as that skin stays raw. I mean, you all know, like any kind of inflammation that just continues and continues, it just snowballs until you have an avalanche. So, if it's not working, you definitely need to get in contact with the dermatologist. And I've had people that have been to a couple, and because we all approach things different, don't give up. If your internal mom voice is saying, this is just not getting better, seek other advice.
I love that. So that brings me to like what Diana and I specialize so much in is the gut. And I can't help but think so in my clinical practice. So when I'm practicing as a chiropractor, I'm so familiar with, I can relate when you said moms will bring their kids into your clinic with a onesie because I'll see it. They're bringing them to me to be adjusted, but you'll see clearly. I mean, it's a hands-on practice being a chiropractor that they are covered. And the mother, it says that like, oh, I have them in a onesie because they just keep scratching it. And we know from the gut standpoint that there's this whole topic of gut maturity. And so I specialize in moms and babies. So I'm seeing the infants and the babies, right? And so we know that the gut, if you guys are not aware, there's this timeline of gut maturity where obviously at birth, I think this is fascinating, the child is born with an immature leaky gut. So like we hear leaky gut and we're like, oh, this is bad, but kids are born with a leaky gut. And then it's about the first 6 months, depending on if you're doing exclusive breastfeeding or formula feeding, where the gut gets introduced, right, to nutrients. You and I had mentioned the other day when we were talking prior to the podcast about the oligosaccharides that the child will get from breast milk and milk, and it basically is feeding the bacteria, right, that what we know as probiotics. It's enhancing this growth of bacteria, good bacteria. The immune system is also improving. The amount of enzymes the body is learning to produce, like it's a learning process, right? So like your baby's not just born with this healthy gut and all these enzymes. In fact, one thing I learned over my study of the gut is kids are riddled with bacteria and parasites. So like it's interesting, and that's okay. And it's okay. I mean, this is how their body learns that like, hey, I'm going to have to learn to fight this guy off or build a stronger immune system or, better gut lining and all that. But when moms get their stool tests from us and they have a parasite, I'm like, you have a little one. Like, what do you expect? Like, we all share bacteria. So we just got to boost your immune system up. You are exposed to their bugs all day long. You're changing poopy diapers. Like, guys, this is the mother world. Like, we gotta be this just I'll take a moment to say this is why you got to take care of yourself as a mom, right? Um, but then I go back to like around a little bit later, it's by like the 9 to 12 month mark where we really just start to see the gut barrier become stronger and more selectively permeable. The immune system becomes a little bit more robust, digestive enzymes get a little bit more robust. And so, and it still even goes from there. Like that's just really the beginning of that strength and robust formation happening. So then, Rebecca, let me take you back to when you're seeing eczema in these like younger kids in those that first year of life. Speak to me about the gut maturation process and how that plays into the eczema piece that you're seeing.
Well, when I see a very, very young child, and especially in that first year of life, having significant eczema, my brain immediately goes to the gut. It really does because, you know, even though even our skin microbiome has to mature and stuff, there it should be on a very nice pathway of maturing. And if you see this like abrupt stop and basically disease happen in the skin, I mean, our skin gives us red flags, literally red flags that there's something going on internal. So and I think I mentioned this. So, and I think what springboarded a lot of this was my son, who's 8 now, was he was the fussiest baby in the world. He's my youngest, and I thought he was going to kill me. Horrible acid reflux and this diaper rash. And I'm not talking just a regular diaper rash. I'm talking about beefy red diaper rash with like this horrible smelling diarrhea and like just would never end. And as a dermatology PA, I mean, I did everything. I tested his skin for staph, for strep. I did like every compounding emollient that I let him go without a diaper. Like, I mean, I did everything. And I was like, why can I not cure this? And the more I would look at it, it was not just like on his tushy cheeks, but it was more coming straight from like where his poop is coming out, and that's not a normal distribution of a diaper rash. And just different things, different providers and even friends that had some food allergies in kids. I was like, maybe this is something more. Started doing some elimination diets, kind of had an idea, finally got him tested at 16 months and had a corn allergy, never had an anaphylactic reaction. And then come to find out, my research brain, well, I've got to dive into this. And it's amazing. This type of allergic reaction in the gut is now looking to be like kind of the understanding of why we think Crohn's disease develops, and it makes so much sense because my son had acid reflux and he had horrible diarrhea. And we know that in Crohn's disease, it's basically inflammation from the mouth to the rectum. And I was like, whoa, I've got to get a hold of this, And I was like, there has got to be so much more of this going on than we realize. And here it's happening like in my child.
Wow, what a story. Like, and it gives mothers encouragement, anyone encouragement to like keep looking, if you get nothing else away from this, which there's a lot, but
Yeah.
um, keep looking because that was like a hidden gem that you found there.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, let me ask you, because I know moms would want to know this. What was that elimination diet like for such a little kid?
Well, thankfully he was little. And so I was able to control a lot of it. What I did not realize until I started doing more and more research is how, and I'm sure you find this with other things, with milk and soy and dairy, it's hidden in so many things. And it can be so overwhelming unless you have, someone to help you. I've found a Facebook community, believe it or not, that were corn allergies, and I read everything I could because corn is in Everything. I mean, everything. Thankfully, I enjoy cooking, so I pretty much had to make everything from scratch. We didn't eat out, but I was determined to help my son's gut heal so he would not. I mean, because Crohn's disease is so much like psoriasis, what I see every day in clinic, and I just didn't want him to have that. I didn't want him to have to go through all of that. Just stopping his life in different periods. I mean, I even got my local pharmacist, on page with me because the poor child couldn't take ibuprofen or Tylenol because they're suspended in corn syrups. So she actually purchased pure ibuprofen and pure acetaminophen powder and weighed it out and folded it in little pieces of paper. And I would dissolve it in milk or juice if he was sick, because like that was the only thing that I had at my disposal.
Whew, okay, I have to unpack this. My brain is spinning, and here's a couple of reasons why. One, let's just go with the thing you just mentioned about the pharmacist, and I want to highlight that because a lot of people don't even know, and I don't know if you used a compounding pharmacy, but a lot of people don't even know that there's an option for compounding pharmacies. And and they do exactly what Rebecca just said. I mean, there's so many mixed ingredients in medicine. In fact, when people are celiac and they come to us and they're like, I can't have gluten, we have to educate them on the medicines that are have like they're compounded with gluten. And so it's like, okay, your diet might be super clear of gluten, but you're taking a medicine every day. And so one, I just want to highlight that a compounding pharmacy, it is an option. And so you can ask your doctors, physicians, or seek in your community, a compounding pharmacy if you need something like Rebecca did. And then I want to say, Rebecca, you're nailing it when it's interesting because you had the benefit of the knowledge being in the dermatology field, knowing like, okay, this is going to lead to Crohn's disease. And so you it's almost like you knew enough to know that, hey, if we have to forgo eating out and we have to do things differently, like, and I'm doing that in quotes, but like it's worth it because I think that a lot of people don't know the deeper consequences. And so when you tell them like, okay, you guys are going to kind of probably have to forgo eating out for a while to get this healed, and your life might look a little different, there's this like hand up, like, stop, like, you mean I have to what, and I want them to hear like, yes, you had the knowledge, but we're sharing it because we want other people to understand that it is worth the extra effort that Rebecca went to for her own son, because the benefits down the road for this little being are so beautiful and you want that, right? So I had to unpack that. And then, my goodness, that leads me into this functional medicine lens. So you were seeking on Facebook, give me what corn is in, all the foods that corn is in. If you guys don't understand, so a lot of people, when they go gluten free, they look for the labels that say gluten free. But if you look at the ingredients, they've taken the gluten out and they had to replace it with something. Okay. And most of those gluten free products are now replaced with corn. So that's like where Rebecca's talking about, like, okay, so even if I were to go out, not that your child was gluten intolerant, but I'm just kind of digging a little deeper. If someone's given this like gluten intolerance, diagnosis or whatever, it's like, okay, I'll just eat gluten-free labeling. But then every corn is in everything, like she said. And so now you need to find a resource of like education and knowledge. And where do I learn more? That is something we highlight in our Optimize Your Gut program because we have so many resources that literally you can snap a picture and take it to the grocery store. And we have brands that, don't have corn in them, don't have gluten in them. So that hard work, I mean, Rebecca, you probably would have loved to have that at that moment. And so that takes me back to that functional medicine lens of the gut skin connection, and where we talked about the gut maturity and whatnot, but then there's like the immune overactivation piece, and that is something that I'm really curious. It takes me to I'm gonna jump to really how I was introduced to Rebecca, which was through Diana. And I'm going to let Diana speak here for a moment. But this immune overactivation piece, we shared a similar patient, that when I saw her stool test, it was this huge immune overactivation. And so I got her last. And so let me backtrack a little bit. And Diana, I'm going to let you jump in and say, because you first had met this patient, and we're going to kind of walk through this case, together. So Diana, I'm going to let you take the floor. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was about to say, I actually met her first in clinic.
Okay,
Yep, it's okay.
let's do that. You start. Let's go from the beginning here.
Okay, so I had met this beautiful little patient with the best personality in the world. But her skin, I mean, it almost had this like dry riverbed appearance to it. Like, and it was all over. It wasn't just, where we talked about like inside of her elbows, backs of her legs. It was her hands, her arms, like her back, her chest, like the backs of her, like the whole entire backs of her legs, not just, the sensitive skin areas. And I was like, it was one of those cases where I just took a step back and was like, this is a lot, And so I started going through everything that, I thought that I could, help and get elimination out, because they were using some creams that were that are stamped as eczema, which, like I said, there's research articles that say what is good and what is bad. I'm like, well, you really shouldn't use that one. So see a dermatologist. And then I finally just looked at her mom and said, I can do everything I can, but as extensive as her skin disease is, this just makes me think there's something going on. This is either food allergies, intolerances, we need to go deeper. And that's when I said, I think you need to go see Diana.
So she came to me and she was like, do you feel like you can help? Obviously Rebecca's like, hey, this is kind of your next step. We've thought maybe there's some food allergies. She had already kind of started connecting those dots because you gave her that information. And so I said, well, one of the things that we've tried to do is develop a few resources. We've put together a couple of nutrition guides. We have a kids and teens guide. We have some swap guides. We have these resources. So let's at least like sit down, talk for a few minutes and talk about swapping some of those foods out and what that looks like. And I literally, showed her, I pulled up on the computer screen. I said, look at the difference in the ingredients in this dressing versus this dressing and this cracker versus a Ritz cracker. And I showed her the difference in what those looked like. And she was like, okay. And I said, these are made from these Simple Meals crackers, for example, these are made from actual real foods. This ranch dressing, even the Primal Kitchen, you can read all of these labels. It's all of the stuff that, you can't read, right? So at first you've got to at least make sure you can read everything on the label, number one. And number two is you need to start kind of journaling down what reaction made it better, what reaction, or what food made the reaction better, what food made the reaction worse. And you can really kind of create this whole picture of, and you could probably figure it out. So she was like, holy moly. And I still remember her, she was like, I got it. I'm going to research it. She told me that she left and within a couple of weeks or that weekend, she went and threw out everything in her pantry, which I don't recommend this. And in fact, we actually tell people like, don't do that. Like, you could do this slowly. And we teach them how to kind of do the swap slowly. But she was like, nope, I got to make some changes. So
well, her daughter was miserable.
She was desperate. So she said, I spent $1,400 at the grocery store. And I mean, thankfully for her, she had the means and the budget to be able to do that, but she's also at this point of desperation, right? So she's already probably tried all these different things. And, so she's like, I'm going to try this. Within just a matter of weeks, she sent me a text message back and came back in and reported to me. She was like, man, she is already way better. And I was like, okay, great. Keep up the good work. Let's keep doing this, see if she improves or whatever. So school went back into session, then life happened, all of those things. She came back to me and I was just like, I think that there's an extra missing piece to the puzzle. I'm like, I applauded her on how great she's done on the work that she had already done with the nutrition, made so much progress. And I was like, if we can kind of look at that last piece of the puzzle and figure out what's going on inside the gut. And I really think you need to do the Optimize Your Gut program. We need to see a picture of what's going on with her inside the gut. Let's look at all of that, get all of that back in balance again. And then you keep doing everything that you've learned, right? You do the, just like you've taught her with, the sensitive creams and, those kind of things. And then what she's learned with me with the nutrition. And then Angela took the deep dive into the gut. And, Angela, I know that this was one of those that we were like, wow, there's really a lot to work on here. Right.
Yeah, I think by the time I had gotten her, exactly what you guys were describing was she seemed, I think, Rebecca, you put it really nicely of like she seemed cooled down, in the sense that she was like she even said with Diana, like with Rebecca's work, with Diana's knowledge of the food, it was like, okay, the mom could take a break. Yeah, the kid wasn't as absolutely miserable, but there was still a need, I think, for what you had recommended her, Rebecca, because it wasn't completely gone, but they were in a much better place. And then we did the stool test, and yeah, Diana and I remember, I mean, I've told you guys, like Diana and I call each other and we're like, wow. Sometimes we get these tests back and we're like, do you see this? And I remember with hers, I mean, for her age, this is what led me into this topic was this immune response. I mean, it was humongous. I mean, the inflammatory marker, there's a marker for eosinophil activation protein, which is like this IgE response. So if you guys don't know, that's like this acute inflammatory response. It was still through the roof. Her liver marker was super high, and that's not like a marker. I know you guys don't fully maybe understand the stool test, but it's not like a liver failure marker. This is like the bacteria in the body, in the gut, leave off these, we call them byproducts essentially, and these byproducts just build up in the system. So your liver is a big organ for detoxification, and if it's overloaded with toxins from this overgrowth, it just can't function, right? So her liver was just slowed down. The ability to detox out of her system was just not happening fast enough, which probably, Rebecca, I'm assuming, led to more skin reaction, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
So when I got her stool test, she had that was huge, but then she also had H. pylori. And Rebecca already mentioned this. So I love when things like come back full circle, but even with your son, you mentioned like the issue wasn't just at the diaper rash. It started up in the oral cavity. Like you knew this was a mouth to anus issue, if I'm being like direct. And the
Mm-hmm.
same with this patient. I mean, she had H. pylori, which if you guys don't know, it's more of an upper GI bacteria. In fact, we're all born with it, so it can be hugely beneficial, but it can also get overgrown. And hers was just high. And so at that point, I think that's when Diana and I were like, this is a whole body. This is like a mouth to anus issue. This is huge. And so we really dove in, and started with, and if I remember, Rebecca, I want you just to mention quickly, I remember talking to the patient and she was like, we're either going to go this route, which is it an injection like
Check.
Dupixent or something like
Mhm.
that from Rebecca, or, we need like they were still kind of in that mode of like, we still need something to change. And so that I want to share with you, I literally remember asking, the patient, because at that point I knew that Rebecca and Diana and the patient were all working together. That's what it takes, a team. And I remember saying like, well, have the conversation with Rebecca. I didn't want to, I could have called Rebecca, but in a sense, I want the patient to be able to have that doctor patient relationship. Like, and I knew Dr. Rebecca was going to, take it for what it is. Like, yes, let's talk about this. So it was easy for me to send the patient back and be like, ask her, is that injection going to affect our ability to heal the gut? Becky, talk about how there is like, you can even go deeper as the dermatologist, and still we on the other end of this can make progress in the gut. And there was that one specific injection that would have kind of helped both of us. Can you just talk briefly about that?
Yeah, so there's obviously there's, I'm sure people see all sorts of ads and stuff on their TV for all sorts of interventions now. There aren't just steroid creams anymore. We have some really amazing new products that are helping a lot of kids and adults with atopic dermatitis that are not steroids, that kind of help, again, cool down the skin. But there are now several different injections that can be given for severe atopic dermatitis. And one of them in particular it is not, and this is the misnomer, because I have this conversation with patients all the time. They're afraid to start injection because, they hear all the side effects and stuff about, awful infections and everything. But there's a very specific class of injectable medications when it comes to eczema, severe atopic dermatitis, that do not suppress the immune system. So there is a protein in the skin called filaggrin, and we know that in atopic dermatitis patients, that filaggrin molecules are much shorter than what they're supposed to be. And so this one injection actually helps to elongate those. And so people that get this specific injection are actually less susceptible to infections because they have severe inflammation of their skin, that, their barrier just continues to be broken down. So it actually helps the skin to heal itself. And those patients using those specific types of drugs actually have less skin infections. And even I use them in older patients when their skin gets really bad. It actually keeps them out of the hospital, keeps them from having cellulitis, so there are so many different treatments out there that are not just what I feel like we've known from the past. Like, they're not immunosuppressive. There are other agents out there that can actually heal things. And again, with this patient, this wasn't a medication I was going to use long term. This was, I knew that she was doing the work with you and Diana. And so I knew that if we needed a bridge, because we were still kind of on and off these flares, you're trying to fix a diet, you're trying to get, supplements or enzymes, all sorts of things. And so I was like, if we have to start this injection just to kind of help her skin and help, again, help her get some sleep. You have so much transient water loss from broken skin. So we're talking about whole body hydration here as well. There's just so many things that this could help bridge the gap while you're doing the deeper work. We can help this process to be a little bit more comfortable, even though it's already stressful. Let's help our skin as much as we can. And we don't, this is not, this is not handcuffs for forever. You don't have to be on this forever because you're reaching the deeper issues. I think this is just going to bridge the gap.
I love that. That's what stood out to me working on this case and collaborating, was I saw that as you were using it as a bridge. I remember her mom saying, I know that, Dr. Becca mentioned she doesn't plan on putting her on it long term. And so I love that you guys had already talked about that, and you set some expectations of how it was going to be used and how it could help her transform, but not be so miserable. And because I think that's why a lot of people don't want to do the deeper work, is they're like, I just don't want to be miserable. And it's there's so many other ways to get here. And so I think you've highlighted that for us today. And I remember what I loved about hearing a testimonial from her mom was, she literally said, we are not waking up putting creams on all night long. And this just again brings us full circle. I have chills, just goosebumps just saying that, because it goes back to, Rebecca, you were saying these kids aren't sleeping. And so then at school, they're probably acting out and they're not coming home being able to connect with you guys as a family. And they're missing out on so many other things because they can't even sleep. And so I remember after all of this hard work they put in with you, with us, working through, my goodness, we did liver, gut repair, nervous system work. She did the whole thing, and they approached it so well. And just getting that testimonial was what a collaboration. And it's so beautiful to have that. So, Dr. Becca, I have to thank you, because that was a fun one for us. And you made it successful with your help. And so I have to to say, for just for the sake of time, guys, we could talk to Rebecca forever. There's so much to know, to learn, and so we do plan on having her on again. But let me ask a couple of things. Just to kind of wrap this up a little bit, what is one thing that most people probably misunderstand about eczema?
That there's so many different types, and I really recommend most people seeing a dermatologist, because, I'm thankful for primary care providers, and they do a great job, but we really, really know the skin and know, like, again, all the products that are best in these kids. And, and the biggest take home thing, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is don't rely on social media, because there's, a lot of that is just anecdotal. This worked for this person, this worked for this person. With any medical provider, like, I'm looking at research. I mean, like I said, I have several research papers that are just about what types of creams, like, actually help the skin and, like, don't cause sensitivity, So I just think it's so important to seek good advice. And not just what you see or what you hear from friends. Like, I just think it's so important to really get a good provider who knows your issue, whether that's, gut, whether that's skin, whether it's eyes. It's so important to just really go to that specialist, and come prepared to be asked a lot of questions. Have your notes, like what you've gone through, and what you're using, what you're trying, what has failed, because all that's so, so helpful. But yeah, see somebody in the field.
And maybe we've set a good foundation for them to know, like, hey, if you go see someone, we kind of laid out a whole clinical experience for you today. And if it's not like that, if the doctor isn't asking you some of those extra questions, or if you're not leaving feeling a little bit more educated, empowered, that doesn't mean stop. That means keep seeking someone that really wants to treat the whole person. So that's awesome. And Rebecca, you mentioned some hot passion topics that you have beyond eczema. We picked eczema because we get it so much, but we are going to have you back on, but kind of leave us with some topics and areas that since you love research, that you've dived into, that we could help educate people on those topics. So give us, like, just a brief little insight on some of those topics that you're researching right now and learning more about.
What if I have a patient in mind that I really want to collaborate with, urticaria, which is hives. That's one that is so hard. And I dig deep into those patients as long as they'll let me. So hives, you can have it for years and years and years. And it takes a whole team to get a hold of those patients and try to eliminate things. Another one is psoriasis. Psoriasis is a huge, big red flag from the immune system that there's something going wrong. And I've seen it, turn on with so many different things. I've seen it occur in somebody who is on the verge of being diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was their skin, like, see a patient and, like, you have this brand new psoriasis on your scalp. Is something else going on? Yes, I'm going to have a breast biopsy, and it's not just that. It's, there's so much psoriasis that's linked with diabetes. And we know that there's a big dysbiosis in a lot of those patients, and also alopecia. There's some amazing things with alopecia, and how it's related to the gut. So, yeah. The more that especially, like I said, the springboard was my son's case. It's like, I see, all the dots, and I saw it in my patients too, after years of patients just saying, why do I have this? And having so many people ask, why do I have this? And I think a lot of those things are getting closer and closer to being discovered. The unfortunate things is it takes a whole team, because, It could have started anywhere. It could have started from, like a parasite. It could have started from a viral infection, a bacterial infection. It could be from H. pylori. There's so many links. And if people are willing to, we can try to find it.
Love that. So that's kind of where we'll end, as one of the big takeaways that Diana and I always say is your body is speaking to you. It is. It's just a matter of, are you listening? And then finding a team who, like, Rebecca specializes in how the skin is speaking to you. So that's when you find your team of, like, what is this symptom actually trying to tell me? And not just suppress it, not just think, oh, I'm 40 and this is just the new me. It's like, no, there's something your body is trying to tell you. And so that's our biggest takeaway too from today is let us be, in this collaboration, whether it's with us, with someone like Rebecca or other doctors, let us be that bridge that helps you learn your body's unique communication, unique language to you. It's actually amazing. So Rebecca, we are so thankful that you took the time today to be with us, to educate our listeners, and we are going to have you back, and we're just going to be more mind blown by all the things that you have to teach us. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. It was such an honor. Really was. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode, so stay tuned.
The information provided on this podcast, including all episodes, show notes, and related content, is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice and should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The views expressed by the host and guests of the Gut Girls podcast are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Gut Girls LLC or any other affiliated organizations. While we are trained health professionals and certified health coaches, we are not acting in a licensed clinical capacity on this platform. Any recommendations made on this podcast, including those related to diet, supplements, lifestyle, and lab testing, are general wellness strategies intended for educational use. Always consult with your licensed healthcare provider before implementing any information heard here, especially if you have a medical condition, are taking prescription medications, or are under medical supervision. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this content as medical advice to treat yourself or others. Neither Gut Girls LLC nor the podcast hosts or any guests shall be held liable for any damage, loss, or injury caused by the use of this information.